You're listening to Cinema Red Pill. I'm Sharon and I'm here at 32 Degrees for the video art session.
Video art screening, yeah.
Video art screening and with Nikissi, the one who's organizing it. So I wanted to introduce the event, everything that's going to happen.
Yeah. Sharon, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for our first podcasted event at 32. This is pretty cool. And also thank you for having me for a second time on Cinema Red Pill.
Yes.
This is very good. I guess video art as a medium in and of itself is not something that's explored in a lot of different places. Or not as explored as some of the other mediums that people regularly engage in for art. So we really wanted to see if we could promote it as a medium, but also see if it can be used as a platform for experimentation, for changing form, styles, techniques, or maybe as a source of inspiration for other people, and just to get people acquainted with this very experimental style of cinema.
Okay. Just for a brief intro, what's the difference between video art and film itself?
Yeah, so video art tends not to rely on a narrative. It doesn't rely on defined characters, and it really is. I mean, I guess a quick go-to answer in my mind is more like it's more a mood-based thing or a technical exploration rather than a this happened, then this happened, and here's the result.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please just give me a rundown of the 3 films that are going to be screened.
So there's actually several films that are going to be screened.
Oh, no, just 3.
In total, the runtime is an hour, but we have films like Black Gold, which is actually from one of the members of one of the curators of Black Radical Imagination, which is definitely a group I recommend everyone checks out. Okay. We also have a piece from Terrence Nance, Swimming in Your Skin Again, which is really good. We have a film called The Golden Chain, and we have To Catch a Dream by the one and only The Nest Collective from Nairobi, which we're really excited about.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good enough introduction.
Sounds good. Good.
Hi,
hey.
David Cecil. Please
Hello.
First introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Cecil, and I live in Kampala.
Mm-hmm. And what video art? Start with what we've been doing here today.
Okay, can I ask you the questions and then we do the interview that way? No, it'll be good. Trust me. What I'm curious about is how did you react to, for example, we looked at a piece of 1940s video art.
Yes.
Which was by Maya Deren, a Hollywood maverick, crazy lunatic who was making films in a period when film was very much focused on, classic feature films.
Yeah.
And she decided to go out and make things that were more like visual poems, quite sinister, quite strange, playing with perspective and time. Yes. And very much part of the surrealist movement. Now, how did you react to that? How did you feel about Maya Deren's film? The bit you saw?
The bit I saw, I found it good, I found it different, and my perspective was you needed a keen eye to see what you could see. You unpacked some stuff which I wasn't able to recognize, so it was helpful for you to be there. And there's a lot of subtext, it's abstract, and it's art. It really embraces art.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you nailed it with the word sort of subtext and abstract in a sense. If we look at narrative film as film that has a beginning, middle and end and is designed to tell you a story or convey a specific message, what Maya Deren's film, which the excerpt was from a film called Meshes of the Afternoon, what it was doing was something completely different. So it's film stripped down to the juxtaposition of images, like images placed side by side. You make up your mind what the meaning is, or don't bother to interpret, just immerse yourself in this mood. So in that sense, I like the term film. I like film poetry or film poems. And the second piece that I showed was a piece by Grace Ndiritu, which was called Nightingale, a bird. And Nightingale is effectively it's a piece about the tension of an unveiling. So you slowly see her face unveiled, and then you see her interacting with the cloth that was veiling her. And so already the words I'm choosing now convey this kind of idea of a woman's femininity being concealed by cloth, which she played with in a very interesting way, I thought. What did you think of
I
that
wonder
piece?
how you're able to interpret that, because even a few people I've spoken to, they would just see it as something you can immerse yourself into,
Right.
but you can't really interpret.
Just
the
a
way
woman
you
playing
do.
around
Just
with
a-
a tea
but
towel.
You're enjoying watching her and playing around
With a tea towel. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but then, you know, a game of football can be just a bunch of guys kicking a piece of pigskin around, you know, and so it's all about how you enter. If the piece engages with you, you will enter into a kind of symbolic exchange with it, and you will be excited by the images you're looking at. Maybe it's because I already think about these things, and then when I see someone playing around with the ideas on screen, then it kind of speaks to me.
I want to interject for a second. So I think that there is also something with video art that requires a shared knowledge prior to interacting with the work, if that makes sense. Like, there's just so many symbols, and they're also presented not without context, but definitely in much more abstract ways than usual, that you just have to, everybody has to be aware of certain things to be able to engage in it or digest the symbols in that way. Yeah. Otherwise, then you do have a much more... Because even the way you're talking about the things, like, some of your interpretations are not totally subconscious. Some of them are very logical and derived from real, tangible things that you're seeing on screen. And the last thing I'll say is that there's one really cool poet, Peter Kagai, who actually writes about it in one of his poems. And he talks about the fact that in order for anybody to be able to create art, or at least for a poet to be able to create a poem, you are only able to communicate to people when you've all got a shared knowledge base. Otherwise, all the references, all the gets lost in the translation.
I have a question. Just, do you think video art is more of like a reaction? Because as you said, so pretty much most of the movements, like film movements, say the new wave and all that, they've pretty much come from trying to change, like I think divert from the status quo of how things are done. So do you think video art is probably like its own thing that came from these people, or it's more of like a rebellion type of thing of people trying to use film in a different way?
You've really hit on something interesting here, because people think that film art's quite new, and okay, there was a big explosion of film art in the 1960s, and I think the most famous naughty man, Andy Warhol. Yeah, exactly. You know your stuff. And so Andy Warhol was sort of challenging people with this new kind of film. But in a way, what I tried to show by showing a 1940s film was 20 years before people were doing stuff that was also very radical and challenging and dangerous for dangerous in the cultural sense. Then if we go back to the origins of film, and much earlier, 1919, one of my favourite pieces of film art, which is The Man with the Movie Camera. Do you remember you watched? Dziga Vertov. My God, you were awake in my classes. Okay, thanks, man. Thanks, bro. But Dziga Vertov was like really. I don't know, Sharon, if you've ever watched Man with the Movie Camera.
I've not seen that.
It's impossible not to like that film, and it's not difficult. You've seen it, Nikissi? Okay, so it was made like 2 years into the Russian Revolution, and in its early days, the Russian Revolution was a very kind of fresh, optimistic time where people believed that using technology and new political ideas, they could remake humanity. And this film, in a very amusing and sort of gentle, playful way, explores how film can revolutionize society. It's not an aggressive film. It's full of like jarring moments and weird moments, but it always returns to a kind of humanism. But at the heart of the film, it's actually about a marriage of humanity and technology, and it's a really amazing, kind of wonderful piece of film art that, for me, shows that right from the start of film, filmmakers understood that film doesn't have to be about narrative. It can be about poetry and ideas and beyond. Like you use the word abstract, it can be about abstract. It doesn't have to just tell a story.
And it can even It can also just be a sensation. Like, I don't know if you guys have also watched The Train. I think it was by the Lumiere brothers, or The Arrival, something like
Absolutely.
this. Yeah, that same kind of thing where it's just like for the first time we're here in front of a screen and you have this really well-placed camera so that it looks like the train is coming directly at you, and, you know, all these hilarious stories, people jumping out of their seats and getting scared, and it plays, I mean, those stories kind of also play on making people seem to be primitive and dumb and unable to digest things, but it's really just about sensory experiences as well, which I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to boil everything down, I think that, like, for me, if you prioritize aesthetics and beauty, or equally horror, but if you prioritize like a sensation and you don't care about narrative is kind of basically irrelevant, then your artwork it's constituted as an artwork. It's not commercial, it's not narrative, it's not just trying to say this is what happened or this is what I want you to think. Then it becomes video art. And then as I tried to explain in my introduction, it's all a grey area. So a lot of what we're talking about here is artistic film. So a feature film that is made with a lot of artistic shots that a Hollywood director would go like, cut that. That doesn't drive the story forward. Yeah. Wait, the hero's not in shot, you know. But a kind of director who's like going, no, that's beautiful, or that's saying something to me, you know, that creates an impression. Then we can call that film art.
But I also think that those lines are actually just going to keep on blurring, not only because everybody has more access to technology, but there's just also way more people who can watch it and who can engage with it. And digital art also just allows you to play a lot more. It allows you from a very basic level of I can literally take more takes, or I can do more kinds of effects that will enhance a sensory experience. But I don't know, sometimes I feel like the process of finding the definitions I find very useful, because you kind of get to understand and unpack more of what it is that you're experiencing. But on some level, I also find that the definitions are irrelevant. Did you go in and engage with the piece or not? And it's a very simple question, you know?
That's true.
Yeah, go ahead.
About video art, I know there are probably a lot of, how should I put it, like probably subcategories or something. You mentioned surrealism earlier. So right now we have been speaking about it, it's very general, but do you think, is there a way to break it down? Because I know surrealism is one thing. I've seen that Buñuel, Salvador Dali film, that's film art, that's video art, right?
No.
Or you think it's more narrative? I don't know. But I think, do you think there are different like schools of thought within video art, or it's just one big thing? Anything that's probably abstract falls under video art?
Well, one key definition, and this maybe is overriding of anything, is about context. And I think that I'm going to keep on coming back to this point about context, because it couldn't be more important with regard to what we've been discussing. How do we define video art? Well, is it made for an art gallery? Okay, so art with a capital A is this kind of phenomenon that's emerged in the last few hundred years, and it's since, I would say, like 1850s in Europe, art has increasingly come to be defined as something that is made to be put in a gallery and then either sold or kept on as a public good, but as a public artwork, okay? A public piece of beauty to be enjoyed. Okay, so one perhaps basic definition is, did the artist make it to be displayed in a gallery? Yes, okay, then it's video art. Did the artist start to work with filmmakers and get involved in making a film project, and like it turned into something that could either be screened in a cinema or whatever? Okay, well then maybe that's like a kind of artistic film, or what I've been calling film art. So I think the key definition is about the context of production and the context of exhibition. So the intention of the artist. And that brings me back to another key point which I'm very worried about. Video art, for me, loses its significance and when it loses its context. You know, it has to be contextualized. And like, look at it this way. Again, I was having this argument about music. I said, like, playing video art in this way is almost like listening to kind of dancehall music, or like hardcore techno, or, you know, some heavy dance music when we're all sitting down listening to it. It's the wrong way to listen to that music. It's the wrong way to look at the video art. So I would argue that, like, for me, some video art has to be looked at in the context of a gallery, or it has to be presented by the artist with a specific, like a specific installation. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, this is something I'm very worried about, and I'd like to work with people here about curating another set of video art where we try and recreate the context and we try and create a kind of different kind of viewing experience. But, you know, I'm aware of the challenges. It's not easy. It's expensive, and who's going to come in Uganda? Yeah.
One more question, maybe. What about, like, I think really artistically made music videos?
Right.
Do you think that's part of video art? Like, forget the more narrative or the ones that we usually have in Uganda. I'm sure you've seen those videos.
In the club.
The clubs, women dancing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are those very abstract music videos. Do you think that also falls as under video art?
Your questions are kind of like a weird, you're a mind reader, because when I was making my notes for this, my last point was, so I asked 3 aggressive questions towards Ugandans, and my last question was, don't you already have video art? You've got music videos. And I think that music videos are a perfect platform for people to experiment with the form of film. And by form, I mean, how do you structure a film? So, you know, like right now, like as you pointed out, there's quite some interesting experimentation going on in some of the music videos, and that's what you were kind of implying, that we already do this. You do. Unfortunately, most of it focuses on like female buttocks, which are beautiful, but I never believed that I would ever become bored of looking at them, and I have done through the medium of the Ugandan music video. So I think that it's a great, there is a great opportunity, and I've seen some really cool videos here that have played around with, like, formally with film. So I've been, if you look at some particularly like electronic music videos that are being produced in different parts of the world, electronic music doesn't have a singer, so they necessarily need to kind of rely on other forms of kind of representation of the producer's intention. So they often use abstract shapes and things like that. But, that's just one example of where you can go really kind of experimental. But I think, definitely we should look at music video. And I'd like also for us to look at ways in which we can again, this came up in discussion earlier, just a final anecdote to finalise what I have to say tonight. When I lived in Kigali, I'm repeating myself here but because I told these guys this story earlier, but when I lived in Kigali, there was a roundabout and an entrepreneur had put up a digital billboard, and no one was purchasing this advertising space because no one had movies to put up there. So what he put up there was an image of a bodybuilder lifting weights, and an image of this fat woman who was endlessly eating food, and both of these things were looped together. So you had this bodybuilder and a fat woman eating food, but they weren't advertising a gym. It was just these images playing in a loop forever. That for me was the first public video art experience I had in Africa.
Okay. I think we've had a great enough discussion. Thank you, Nikissi. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Timothy.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, Cinema Rental.